Hello book fans, Robin here, and I'm back with another video for you in the book garden. So it's been a while since I've recorded a video. I've been having, not for the first time, some sort of existential reading crisis and trying to decide what sort of content I want to make. Trying to do reviews of every book I read was giving me a big workload, I was getting behind, I had other things to do, and it started to feel like a stress. And really, of all the things, reading and talking about books should not be stressful. So I've come up with a slightly cut down version of how to proceed, and hopefully I can keep up with that, not get stressed, but still give people interesting content that they want to watch. So what I'm going to do in this video, and from now on, I'm going to review everything I've read in January in one video. I found that the videos that I recorded where I talked about what I was going to read next month do much better than the individual reviews. So hopefully a sort of summary of my month's reading in one place will do the same. Do let me know in the comments below if you like this format, if you want to see me do more videos like this. It just makes the schedule a little bit easier, and just to say, it makes everything a little bit less stressful. So first up in January was Tyranny of Faith by Richard Swan. I think I actually started this before the year was out, but it's the sequel to The Justice of Kings, which is one of my books of 2023, which I've done a video of if you want to check that out. And I really enjoyed it, the Justice of Kings, and this is kind of more of the same. It's a little bit denser, maybe. It's quite a thick book, a lot of classic fantasy tome. And it carries on the story of our narrator, who is sort of clerk to the Justice Conrad von Volt, and it shows us a world in turmoil, a kind of proper medieval Germanic fantasy world in turmoil, lots of internecine politics going on. And it's just more of the same. I have to say I didn't quite enjoy it as much as the first book. That said, there's lots of interesting threads. I suppose it's probably like, I don't know, classic middle novel. Lots of things are set up, not a huge amount is resolved. Things get pretty grim for our characters, but it's all nicely balanced for a third enthralling installment, which I think is out in the next month or so. I would still definitely recommend the Empire of the Wolf trilogy so far, 2 books. It's a really deep, thoughtful fantasy series about the kind of, it really explores the power and misuse of religion and how power structures control the population and grab power for themselves. So it's a deep, thoughtful read. So this gets a little bit heavy at times, but then that said, there are still some great action sequences, and the magic system I do really enjoy. So next up in 2024 was another book that followed on from a book I really enjoyed in 2023. One of my favourite reads 2023 was Until the Last of Me, the second book in the Take Them to the Stars trilogy. This is the third and final book in that trilogy, for the first time again by Sylvain Neuvel. Really love these books, really great counterfactual alternate history of how the space race materialised. This book I actually was alive for some of the events, so I do remember them. So again, Sylvain Neuvel delivers an excellent narrator who takes us through their story of whether they're going to get to space. The premise of the book is that the aliens have landed on Earth centuries ago, and they're trying to push humans towards the stars. And it's really enthralling, fascinating, and you won't quite guess how it's going to pan out. And there's some interesting bits that sort of thread through towards the end. I love the way Sylvain Neuvel ties the real world into his story, and the way he kind of shows off some of the brilliant female scientists that have been around over the centuries, and also has a little look at some of the darker aspects of the space race history sort of woven in there too. Really enjoyed it, thoroughly recommend this series. He also wrote a series called Sleeping Giant, which I also thoroughly recommend, and I really can't wait to see what Sylvain Neuvel does next. Continuing in the same vein is The Bitter Crown by Justin Lee Anderson. I read the first book of these, The Lost War, in December, loved it. Didn't particularly review it, but it hit my books of 2023, and this one is even better, and the two together are phenomenal. I really enjoyed this. I haven't enjoyed a fantasy series as much as these 2 books now for a very long time. The characterization is excellent. The mirroring of real world events, which I always love in a science fiction fantasy book. It really makes you think about how power structures work and control, and it's really readable. And I think the best bit is that it confounds expectations at every turn and has some fascinating observations about good, evil, the great power, great responsibility, which I know is obviously an often used trope, but it just really it does everything it does brilliantly well, and just does things that have been done before in a new and interesting way. and I just really love it. So I would thoroughly recommend. It's called the Iden Saga, the whole two. But I thoroughly recommend that if you read any of these books that I've read in January, I would thoroughly recommend you pick up the Iden Saga. The next couple of reads are my children's books of January. The Shirley Mars Countdown to Yesterday. Actually, I was in a real written review. I write reviews on Geek Dad, and I was in a real written review doldrums. I wasn't quite sure what I was going to write, and this boosted it right at the beginning of the month. Countdown to Yesterday, fabulous little children's book. It's about how children best cope with when their parents are divorcing. It's got a little time travel theme too. It's got really great characters set in Australia with Chinese Australian characters. Really great characterization again. I just loved it. It was just a really nice, heartwarming book about friendships and about family and about the difficulties of navigating problematic times in family. And I just thought it didn't sugarcoat things, but it wasn't too gloomy. It offers hope. I just thought it was a really great book, and I thoroughly recommend it, particularly if you have children who are going through difficulties with their family breakup. The other children's book I read in January was Impossible Creatures by Catherine Rundell. This book was feted everywhere as being absolutely marvellous, and I have to say I'm inclined to agree. It's really hard, I find, when you come to a book that's been universally acclaimed to get the best out of it. But this book, I mean, I have to say, I was still inevitably a little bit disappointed because I'd heard so many good things about it. It was really hard to live up to my expectations. But it still is an excellent, excellent book. It's set to be a classic, I think. It's in the Philip Pullman mode. It definitely borrows heavily from the Northern Lights as an inspiration. It's not a copy in any way, but it's got that kind of same feel. It's got characters from disparate worlds together. It hasn't quite got the demons like in the Dark Materials trilogy, but it has similar things. One of the characters has a real affinity with animals and the land. So essentially the book has a sort of magic land in the North Atlantic, which is kind of hidden from the rest of us. And there's sort of magic realms, and there's all these impossible creatures, the mythical creatures of the book, and things are going wrong there. The magic is fading, and one of the characters has an affinity with the creatures, and these mythical creatures. So that kind of is a bit like the Lyra and Pantaleon dynamic going on there. And then there's the boy in the book discovers that he's one of the guardians, or from the line of the guardians who live in the real world, but he can travel to the magic world, and they have to defend the magic. And it's a really interesting look at power structure. And I think that's going to be a massive topic in 2024 with the whole nature of the way conspiracy theories and people in power abuse that populism. I think that's going to be a real theme coming through, and it kind of does in this book too. And it is really, really good. I think it's going to be. I assume there's going to be a series. It kind of is all wrapped up in here, but there's definitely unanswered questions too. So I think we're definitely going to see more of these, and I'm really looking forward to them because it is really good. And I am denied about whether buying this hardback. I'm pretty sure when the second one comes out, I'll be straight out to buy it. So really, really good, really, really good, and worth the prizes that it's won and all the acclaim that it's had. My final read was Shigidi, or Shigidi, I don't know how to pronounce it, and the Brass Head of Abeloufon. This I really enjoyed. It took me a little while to work into it. I was trying to read it on the train, which didn't help. It was quite noisy, and I struggled a little bit. It's very, very different from many things I've read before. It's written by somebody called Wole Talabi, and it's steeped in African sort of mythology and Nigerian culture, which is obviously something I don't know very much about. I've digging deeper into it afterwards, doing a bit of research. It's a fascinating sort of pantheon of gods, and they're all vividly brought to life in this interesting book that spans centuries, following two characters, one succubus and one god of nightmares, who basically can kill people in their nightmares. And they kind of team up to try and break away from this effectively old firm of gods. It describes it in here as a bit of a heist novel. I suppose technically it is, but it wasn't quite what I was thinking. This is no Ocean's 11, but it is a fascinating look at Nigerian culture and African mythology, which I really would like to read more of. So again, this book kind of is all tied up by the end, but I definitely think there's scope for us to see more novels featuring Neoma and Shigidi sort of getting up to various shenanigans and things, I definitely can see that we might see more novels in the same vein. But I'm looking forward to those. And Wale Talabe's got a couple of other sort of novellas and short stories out there, I think. So maybe if I find time, I'll try and dig those out, because they're an author whose work I would very much like to explore further. So I hope you found that interesting. That was my January roundup. January is always the longest month, but I hope you found this interesting. I managed to get all the books read in January, which is really good. February likely to be less successful. It's a shorter month, and I see a very big pile of books. But do look out for the February video, which will be out very shortly. And let me know what you think of this format. Let me know if you've read any of the books that I've read, what you think of them, and let me know what you're looking forward to reading in 2024. Until then, I'll see you soon. Bye.